The United States might be a step closer to giving reparations to Black Americans to address the impact of slavery. NTD's Christina Kim looks at the voices for and against this proposal.
Reparations has always been a controversial topic, and in the current political climate, we may be closer than ever to giving out reparations to Black Americans. The Biden administration supports the idea. The president said he'd support a task force to study reparations, and the vice president has floated the idea during her time in the Senate. A panel discussion from the House Judiciary had speakers arguing for and against the proposal. Some said reparations are a necessary step to reconciliation.
America must engage in full reparations. There's no rational reason why the highest standard of redress should not be applied to a people harmed by its own government in so many ways and for so many years.
Reparations can play a role in addressing health disparities because they are about undoing structures of injustice, including structures of racial injustice that produce health disparities.
The U.S. has never fully or properly reckoned with the gross human rights violation of chattel slavery and the post-emancipation racist policies that continue to impact Black people in the U.S. today.
Others say it's unclear who would pay for reparations and who would receive it.
Reparation teaches separation. Where would the money come from? Does it come from all the other races except the Black taxpayers? Who is Black? What percentage of Black must you be to receive reparation?
And my dad always told my brothers and me the following: hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. You cannot control the outcome, but you are 100% in control of the effort. And before you complain about what other people did to you, go to the nearest mirror and say to yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome?
Political scientist and former Princeton professor Carol Swain says the current racial tension is a communist tactic to keep people divided.
It's just Marxism being played out at a level that most Americans, I don't think, thought was possible. And they believe this happened quickly. This did not happen quickly.
And according to her, reparations will continue the divide.
And even if they were to pass slave reparations, the people that benefit from keeping us divided, that use race as a weapon, they'll never give it up.
She says the rhetoric behind the push for reparations and other governmental programs harms the Black community.
If you believe, as the political left says, that everything is stacked against you, it doesn't matter what you do, you're discriminated, you're going to be discriminated against because of the color of your skin, then why get out of bed?
If she had believed those, quote, destructive messages, Swain says she wouldn't have had the opportunities she's had. She would not have continued her education and, quote, would be in the rural South, married in poverty. Swain encourages people both inside America and abroad to be bold and press back against the division.
They can't cancel all of us. They can't do it. And again, truth cannot be stamped out. They cannot stamp out truth.
She says she's hopeful that by working together, things can turn around. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Council members in a major West Coast city have voiced support of communist-ruled Cuba. However, a self-made Cuban immigrant living nearby tells a very different story. Echo Liu in Seattle has more.
Julio Ortiz is the owner of the Twisted Cuban Cafe and Bar in the city of Woodinville. He is an author, a collector, and an entrepreneur. Now at 46 years old, he spent just over half his life under the Cuban communist regime's rigid control.
It obligated me to leave Cuba, to leave the country, to leave my culture, my mom, my dad, my family, and all the idea and expectations and future that I had planned out. What future? There's no future in Cuba, and that's the reason why I left.
Ortiz left behind his life in Cuba to pursue his dream in America when he was 24. He was studying to become a doctor, but the communist government decided they didn't need anymore and prohibited him from his studies.
They don't care about your rights. They don't care about your freedom of speech. They don't care about absolutely nothing. And that's the reason why I got out. They select who they want to go to school or not.
Now he owns several businesses in Washington state. He also wrote his own book, Escape from Cuba, to tell both his children and the world his story under a communist regime.
Well, my comment on Cuban communism is I compare it to COVID-19. Very simple. So I'll prefer to deal with the COVID-19 virus, even though it's killing a lot of people, but it's killing them fast. The communism kills people slowly. They kill your ideas. They kill your mentality. They kill your rights.
Ortiz knows what communism would mean for the United States.
Well, I think promoting Cuban communism in this country, not just Seattle, just in this country in general, it is just a way to kill our society.
Ortiz's comments come at the same time that 2 Seattle council members have voiced their support for Cuban communism. Councilwoman Teresa Mosqueda recently retweeted a post promoting communist Cuba. In January, she and Councilwoman Shama Savant passed a resolution calling for collaboration with Cuba from the Biden administration.
It destroyed my family. It destroyed all my opportunities in education and physically, mentally, psychologically. It destroyed everything, as it still destroys a lot of people in Cuba right now.
Despite the damage inflicted on his family and life, Ortiz lives by a simple motto.
In the back, it says, "I've never had a bad day in my life."
He said he hasn't been back to Cuba since publishing his book and knows trouble may await him back home.
It has to be done. It's my life, and I'll prefer to die instead of hiding it.
Reporting by Echo Liu, NTD News, Washington.
The Star Spangled Banner waves proudly over a California highway. A protest group and its counter-protesters encounter complaints after gathering at an overpass each week. We hear more from NTD's David Lamb.
If location is everything, you couldn't ask for a better spot. This overpass, visible from 1 mile away, hangs 50 feet over Highway 24. Lisa Disbro and her group have been rallying here for nearly 20 years. They're known as the Lafayette Flag Brigade. The group promotes free speech and more recently, Stop the Steal protests here on Mondays and Fridays.
And if you don't like somebody's ideas, that's okay. But you don't get to go and dox them. I've been doxed. You don't get to swarm their car and make accusations that they're drinking. That's wrong. That has to stop.
Disbro says the overpass has a significant history. On September 11, 2001, a man held up a flag on the bridge, and by that evening, the bridge was flooded with people holding flags. She says it's become a gathering place for difficult times. But in the past few months, she says counter-protesters show up, and they're intimidating and violent.
So yeah, we do have a lot of counter-protesters. There are some regulars. A lot of them know my name because I've been coming here.
Recently, the city has received letters and emails from residents demanding the bridge be covered by shadow cloth or a ban on free speech activities on the bridge, claiming the protesters' activities are too loud and distracting for motorists who could get into accidents.
Make sure it's safe, because we're safe out here. We're peaceful and we're safe. We're out here for everything, for the love of America, our right to come out here, because this is public property.
The city council says the state's transportation department's policy is to ban all expressive signs, banners, and flags on highway overpasses, except directional signs. But because the state owns the bridge, people are allowed to carry flags on the sidewalk. There's still debate about whether affixing the flags to the fencing is appropriate.
What they're doing is actually really dangerous. There's been a lot of pressure from the local neighborhoods here in Lafayette to get them out of here.
He was one of the counter-protesters that day.
I went and talked to that guy. He seems pretty nice, and I like how he's respectfully exercising his First Amendment right, because he has just the same right to be here as we do.
The city council has to respond to the city people. It's not that we're leaving a mess behind us. It's that they don't like what we're saying. And that's called an impingement of free speech.
It's about 5:30 in the evening and it's cold and windy. The protesters are still here, maybe here for another hour. They've been here for 2 hours. They told us that they're here for their First Amendment rights. It doesn't look like they're about to give up. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Up next, a Chinese company claims 10% of New York City's electricity runs through their equipment. An expert breaks down the potential risk. And a number of Chinese human rights activists have been detained, sentenced to prison, or even sent to mental hospitals, all because they spoke out against the Chinese Communist Party. Stay tuned to find out more.
Someone has to find a way to build the Great Dome. completely original.
마을 유치원 폐쇄 명령서입니다.
저 폐쇄 명령 받아들일 수 없습니다.
유치원 폐쇄 명령이라.
학교 들어간 건 어떻게 됐어? 도저히 방법이 없대?
정현조 사장님을 대신해서 제가 대신 말씀드리면 안 되겠습니까?
A Chinese company claims their equipment processes 10% of New York City's electricity. An expert tells NTD about some alarming consequences that could happen if the equipment is tampered with. But the risk doesn't stop there. NTD's Juliet Song has the latest.
Potential risks posed by Chinese equipment are back in the spotlight. That's as a Chinese company claims its gear supports 10% of New York City's electricity. A security expert with decades of experience in the energy industry is ringing the alarm. He says if the Chinese equipment is compromised, the city could see a partial blackout. Not only that.
You're talking about not only 10% directly of the power coming into New York, but that's going to affect the other 90% because they're going to have to, in a sense, make up for that 10%. And they may not be capable of doing that.
The equipment in question is called a power transformer. Despite the name, they're not alien technology found in sci-fi films, but critical devices in America's national power grid. Without them, the electricity we need couldn't be delivered to homes and businesses. Chinese company JSHP sold a power transformer to a power plant in New Jersey. That plant powers at least 500,000 homes in New York City. The company made headlines last year. That's after federal officials seized one of its power transformers. Authorities later sent the equipment to a lab that investigates national security threats. Weiss alleges before this incident, a U.S. utility company bought a Chinese-made transformer and found something unexpected.
They found extra electronics in it that should not have been there.
It's unclear how the device affects the transformer.
The concern here is that where that equipment was installed, there is no data to steal. The only thing it would be there for is really either to damage the transformer or to affect the operation of the electric grid. That is a very, very big problem.
And the concerns don't stop there. Weiss says if a power transformer breaks down, it can take a long time to get a new one in place.
So this isn't like if something breaks, you go to Home Depot and get another. If there's a problem here, you're talking potentially a year without this.
At least 200 Chinese power transformers are sitting in the U.S. power grid system right now. Weiss says the government should tighten regulations and check for hardware backdoors in the Chinese gear. Reporting by Juliet Song, NTD News.
Now we look to the stories of several Chinese human rights activists. They're currently in jail after standing up for freedom and opposing the regime. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has the story.
For Chinese people, Lunar New Year is a holiday about family reunion. But many people in communist China were unable to celebrate with families this year. Many of them are human rights activists imprisoned for their activities. At least 4 Chinese women were sentenced to prison or sent to psychiatric hospitals by the CCP in the past year. Li Yanli was sentenced to 4 years in prison in April 2020 for posting online in support